and welcome to Data Conversations over Coffee with myself, Craig Stewart. Today I'm joined by Louise Blake, who is the VP of Data at Seera Group in the Middle East. Louise is actually one of our top 100 global data analytics innovators and joined us for that roundtable a couple of weeks back. But Louise and I have actually been working together, interacting for quite a few years now. Across the Middle East, Egypt, but it's nice now to have this digital participation. Louise, how are you doing? Thanks so much for being on the show.
Good, thank you. Yeah, like you say, I was just looking the other day and I think it's been maybe like 3 years, maybe more than that, maybe 3.5 years or so, since we first started coming to the event. So yeah, time flies.
Yeah, I can't believe how fast time goes. I kind of think back to when I started Corinium here in South Africa. It was 5 years ago now. And I just actually can't believe how quickly that time's gone, how quickly the community's grown, both here in South Africa, but the Middle East as well. I mean, I think that's probably been one of the faster growing regions. I think since we first met up at an IBM dinner at the Burj Al Arab or something like that.
Yeah. Wow, that was a long time ago. But I think, and I do honestly think that you guys and the work that you're doing has been pivotal to the community here in UAE anyway. Because if I think about, the others, if people in similar roles, here it's definitely people that I've met through your events.
Yeah. Oh, good to know. I think that's kind of really what we want to drive, is more that sort of community feel, link people up. And now we have to do it digitally. Hopefully, in the too distant future, we'll have another dinner at the Burj, because you can just never say no to that, I guess.
I know, it's closed at the moment, which is crazy.
Very sad.
Can you even imagine? Yeah,
absolutely. So Louise, I thought maybe what we could do just to kick off is give, because a lot of the viewers of this podcast, listeners, etc., are based in South Africa and Africa, obviously growing in other regions, but a lot of people wouldn't be familiar with Seera Group. So maybe you can just give us a bit of a brief intro into the group. Obviously a very big group, big reach, and obviously your role there as well.
Yeah, of course. So Seera, it's the biggest travel platform, I'd say, in the MENA region. So we actually offer everything to do with travel. So from a B2B perspective, B2C, so we sell, our kind of main platforms are web and app for flights, hotels, packages, transfers. So that's kind of our consumer brand. But then we also have a car rental company as well, which we're starting to run a lot more collaboratively now. We have corporate travel, so we cover all of the government travel and any kind of big corporate companies, if they're end-to-end travel. And we also have Hajj and Umrah, which is religious travel, so that's dealing with inbound travelers coming globally to visit the pilgrimage. We also have just launched a DMC, Discover Saudi, which is all around inbound travel into Saudi, which is brand new. And I think timing wise, it was pretty unfortunate, because we launched it and then all the borders closed. So we're very much trying to, make sure that all our pieces are in place when they open again, and we can start welcoming visitors into Saudi as well. And then on top of kind of all of that, we also have a lot of investment. So we have corporate ventures. So we invest in a number of different companies globally, but all to do with travel, somewhere along the travel spectrum. So we have our head offices in Riyadh. We have stores, so Al Musafa, which is our consumer brand. We have a number of stores in Saudi itself. We also have an office in Dubai, which is where our kind of tech office, which is where I'm based most of the time. And then our corporate ventures are in UK. So we're kind of spread out everywhere. I think all in all, there's around 2,500 employees. So it's quite a big company. What do I do? So data. So I actually joined the consumer brand. So we have Tijal and Al Musafa, two different brands for different regions. When it was a startup, so it was run like a startup. So it was very much data first. So I kind of took a leap and joined an unknown company, and data was really the center of everything. So when we were actually able to build a very sophisticated platform, it was a startup, so we didn't have the legacy of horrible data that was unclean and no one really knew where it came from or what it did or why we had it. So we were able to build something quite quickly. we made a really good impact. So when the group, we kind of joined a bigger group, the decision was made to actually make data a central corporate function for the entire Seera Group. So to take it out of the startup kind of company and into the wider group, which was great for us, great for the data team. It meant we were able to expand, and also we'd kind of made a lot of the errors early on, but it didn't really matter because we were much smaller. So we were able to grow faster with kind of our lessons learned along the way. So yeah, so now we have a data team, which we have 4 different functions within data, a total of around 25 people. So yeah, it started off 4 years ago with me. We had 1 analyst join, and then we've got to where we are now, which is which is great.
Right, that's great growth. And I think a lot of the big corporates are always envious of the startups that can, kick off with data at the heart of everything that they do. No legacy systems, no data silos.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of, one of the things I do talk about when I've asked this sort of question, can you give us some advice when big companies sort of, we're having these conversations. I say, think like a startup if you can.
Yeah.
Think, especially you starting your data journeys, think like a startup. Put data at the beginning of that. Data is kind of the enabler and everything with the tech to better business decisions and sort of growing your. But put data at the start of that. Don't kind of go and build everything and then start to think about the data.
Exactly.
At the end.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's something that I think we've been very keen to do here, is very much being kind of business question first. So why do you need it and what are you going to do with it, as opposed to just being, we have all of this data, we have to store it, we have to use it in some way. And then you end up with, pretty looking dashboards that everyone says, oh, that's nice. And no one really uses it for anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about there, obviously a very big group. You've got all parts of travel, you've got the car rental, etc. So one would assume that you've got lots of data sources. Obviously, it's coming in from different areas. Same customer on different platforms, different customers, different platforms. I'd assume because you started with data really at the heart of everything, you don't kind of face that challenge of silos and trying to break down the walls to get other people's data. Is it all quite as cohesive as I would assume it is, or there's still some of those sort of inherent challenges?
There's definitely some of the challenges. I think when we look at the consumer brands that we have, for sure, our data's a lot cleaner. People are making transactions online. Therefore, we know the email address is going to be right. We know their phone number is going to be right because they want their ticket and they want to make sure that they have the right information. We have challenges, especially when, and from legacy, when people purchase things in store. And I think when we have especially the agents who would be entering information, they're printing someone out a ticket and giving them a physical ticket. So from the beginning, I don't think there was necessarily the importance of capturing the right data, because it didn't really make a difference. They didn't see it anywhere. They didn't think, if I put a@a.com, doesn't really make a difference, from an agent point of view. So there wasn't really, not repercussions, because that sounds like we were very mean to them, but I mean, they didn't really see the point of capturing information. So we definitely had a lot of data that we had to try and deal with from the offline perspective and from the call center as well. And then again, the same when we look at, say, car rental, where most of the purchases were made via kiosks, so person to person. So again, data capture doesn't really seem that critical to the work that they're doing, because again, there's no repercussions if the data is wrong, because you're physically giving someone a ticket and they walk away. In the same way, if you're in a store and you don't really care for a physical receipt, but you get one anyway. But for us, I think the main kind of the change for that and the challenge that we had to try and overcome, I suppose, was looking at, how much of it is process, how much of it is the technology. Are we giving the agents too much freedom, to free text? Should we, put if they try to enter an email address that isn't a valid email address? So the one thing that helped us get over that was to basically, for every agent, we provided them back with a data quality score. So they were very much used to working on an incentives basis for the packages that they were selling, but not really the quality of the information they were capturing. So we added additional layering to that. So the agents were able to also log into a dashboard and see their sales, But as well as that, given almost the same size on the screen as the sales benefits and incentives, they were also told, how they were doing with regards to scoring the data quality. So were the email addresses, were they frequent email addresses we've seen too many times before? Did they have the right format? Same with phone numbers. Is the agent entering their own phone number? Each of these means that, that record itself, a transaction, gets a big X on data quality, and they don't get the same benefits that they would have got.
I'm always sort of fascinated and interested in how the data team sort of gets involved in the KPI setting, etc. Because obviously that call center agents or the frontline agent got many other KPIs, number of calls they make, sales that they need to do. So then you're plugging into that data quality. And I will get to it in a bit, I assume, sort of through the your data literacy programs and things. But how have you found that? Do you find that people are really receptive to that, or it's kind of like, oh, another KPI that I've got to kind of deal with? I've got KPIs coming in 3-4 different directions at me.
I mean, I think it depends if people are doing well at them. They like them. If they're not, they don't. No, I think for us, it's around, measurement is key. And I find that when you show people their own data back to them, it makes people a lot more, a lot more interested and a lot more engaged when we do things kind of at an agent level. Defining the KPIs, we're definitely, part of that conversation for sure. We capture data from lots of different places. You were saying for call centers, so we have call data, we have our customer satisfaction scores, we have our net promoter scores. So all of this information, although they're captured in different places, we bring them together and put them in one place, which I think helps have that kind of, I suppose, holistic conversation, because you're viewing everything together rather than seeing KPIs as standalone, which is key for us.
And I suppose the data quality and understanding the customer better improves their performance anyway.
Well, it does. And I think that's the thing, is being able to give people back information or insight that helps them do their job, rather than saying, here's a stick and we're gonna whack you with it because you haven't done something right. And for things like incentives and we work on cross sales as one of the products we'll talk about later, but for us to be able to understand if an agent has been able to cross-sell a product. So if someone's bought a flight and the agent calls them to see if they're interested in a hotel, for us to be able to tie those two records together, the data needs to be entered correctly in the first place. If the agents don't enter it correctly, it's not classified as a cross-sell and they don't get their incentive. So I think that it's an interesting balance between, we often struggle with it, trying to get, how much can we fix after the fact with bad data quality, and how much do we focus on changing the process in the beginning? Because ideally, obviously, you want the data to be as near to the truth as possible when it actually, goes into any platform you're using. But there is, certain workarounds you can do from a data level. But again, it's, if you go too far down that path, you're never going to get the right data from the beginning. But you also want to be helpful enough to be able to use the data rather than just say it's wrong because they entered it incorrectly. So that's kind of, we're having those struggles at the moment.
And I find in my conversations recently, a lot of that around when you're trying to change the culture and attitude towards data, it's much more around how can we help you do your job better?
Exactly.
Not something that necessarily was coming up, and maybe just because I've been having more in-depth conversations through this show that it's come up a lot more, but it's not something I recall sort of 12 months ago where people more like, no, we have to do it. When now it's a lot more around, we're going to go into the call center, the front line, the sales operations. Let us show you basic and help you be better at what you do, not make us look good.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's that integration piece. So we've been working quite a lot recently through our data academy, which I think we'll talk more in detail about, is, actually bringing people from within those business units and corporate functions into the data team and saying, this is everything we're doing for other people. Let's talk through what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and how can we help you optimize what you're doing, rather than us saying, here's something that we're told that we need to use to measure you by. As you say, it's a very different conversation to have, and it's almost when you have that approach, people do tend to get defensive, and people have different ways of working on things. But if you can again show how you can help people, and I always remember it, and I think it's going back to my Ticketmaster days. So few jobs way back when. I'd say probably maybe, how long ago was that? I don't know, 6-7 years ago, maybe more, where we worked with concert promoters a lot. And the whole idea was we were trying to help concert promoters sell more tickets, so concert tickets. And we first launched Live Analytics, which is our analytics platform, where we were able to, we actually took, it was very interesting even for then, we used to take our customer data and then work with the credit bureau to append additional attributes about the customer. So we would actually be able to append things like has a high propensity to book short or long-term holidays, responds better to 2-for-1 deals rather than discounts. You know, all of these different variables that we were able to actually understand about the customer. And we then use that to profile the audience, to go back to the promoters and say, actually, if you want to do some marketing, maybe this magazine would be good, or this TV channel, or, you know, all of these different things. So I think back then it was actually quite it was very new. I mean, it was a very fresh approach then. Even now, so I don't think it's come on so much. But then I remember the first time I used to meet the concert promoters, they would be very stern-faced, you know, people that had been in the business for 20, 25 years, and they would just look at me and say, do you think I don't know how to sell my own concerts? Like, if I don't need you to help me, if I couldn't do this, I wouldn't be doing my job. And it would be very, very, very stony faced. But then it was actually when we were able to show them something and you could see the light bulb moment, and they would be like, oh, okay, tell me a bit more about this. And then, you know, you would win them, I suppose, on board that way around. But it's definitely something I think from data, because historically it's been seen as, you know, the outside people, almost like the audit function within an organization. You know, you get an email from the audit team and everyone starts freaking out. And I think data was seen like that. But I think it's about, you know, working a lot more integrated and showing people that it can only be, it's only for good. And can help people in the work they're doing, and give them examples, show them. Sometimes I think there's also an interesting, I suppose, approach where some people are very much requirements driven, where the data team almost sit back, hands up, and say, okay, you give me your requirements, what do you want? And for me, that's not really necessarily the best approach. It's definitely, you work together and you start with, you know, walk me through your everyday work, and then come up with ideas as to how you can help do that, as opposed to tell me what you need from data. And if you say that, you're basically going to end up showing people bar charts and pie charts, and that they'll probably look at once a month and screenshot them and put them into another presentation.
Exactly, we kind of lose that interest. And I think that's one of the things I talk about a lot as well, is the co-creation of models and ideas and insights. Get the other teams actually bought in or involved in the process, so that the buy-in is immediate, because it's theirs.
You have to, exactly. That it's theirs from the very beginning. That's what's most important, rather than, you know, sitting back and working on a product and turning around in 2 months' time and say, look what I built you. And then the first thing will probably be like, oh, well, that won't work for us because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get into talking about the Data Academy that you launched. The origins of the show actually were data literacy over coffee. And it's kind of morphed into various things. Data literacy kind of comes up in every conversation that I have. And some people are doing it sort of on a, you know, sort of non-structured approach. There's really good examples. There's a data university at Absa CIB with on the top 100 as well. So maybe give us some insights into your Data Academy, how it started, what it is intent, how it's structured, etc.
Well, it started because one of our key initiatives for this year, I mean, maybe going back to last year, you know, the idea was for the wider group with all our disparate data sources, you know, our focus was around building that strong platform. So bringing all the data into one place, making sure it's clean, making sure it's, you know, refreshed, it's ready to use, getting people up and running on their basic, I would say, KPIs. And then the idea was, you know, we did that. We were up and running. We were good. Things were running. So the focus for this year, or 2020, before it all went crazy, was around, we launched a DNA program, which was data and analytics. And the idea is to truly embed data into the everyday work of everyone within the organization. So there was a number of different ways in which we approached it. One of them was around kind of improving our engagement. So we did a lot of videos on our internal platforms where we do, you know, a day in the life of an analyst, and, you know, we almost make it a bit more real, a bit more human. We launched case studies, so where we've helped different bits of the organization, and then making sure that we get the endorsements and the quotes from the actual end user, rather than, as you mentioned before, data the team saying, look how great we are, look all the amazing stuff we've done. It's obviously a lot better when it comes from someone who's been able to use it and get some benefit. So off the back of that, we kind of raised a lot of engagement, and there was a number of questions that people wanted to know more. So that's why we've started to launch a more formal process of the Data Academy, whereas previously it was pretty informal. You know, the analysts dedicated to each business unit would do the kind of on-the-job training, as it were. So we decided to make it into like a full curriculum. So now we currently have 3 modules. We started the first one, I think it was 6 weeks ago. We have module 1 is very much around understanding data, the data flow, you know, how you can use it, but more getting people on board with the kind of key metrics that we use, you know, understanding of data governance, you know, what's responsible use of data. So all of these kind of areas. We then have module 2, which is a lot more, I suppose it's gamification, which is, it's really funny when you know when a module is going on, because you actually see people running around the office trying to find answers, because it's done very much, it's quiz-like, and people really find it fun. And then we have, that's module 2 is really around the application of, you know, the knowledge. So we set people business questions, more like mini case studies. And then module 3 is dedicated to each business unit, where we take an actual problem that's happening and we try and solve it using data in collaboration with the people within that business unit. So it's a 3-tiered approach. So far since we launched, we've had 120 people attend the first module, which is great. And then 40 for module 2. So we're actually, the first module is booked up now until I think the end of January, with people signing up for it. Obviously it helps, it's remote at the moment, so anyone can log in. But it's been great. The appetite has surprised me. I shouldn't be surprised, but it really has. And I think that, you know, it's raising those questions. It's not just about giving people training. It's also, we're seeing the engagement levels increase a lot more, because people are more aware about what's happening within data and what's available to them as well.
And that intake is really strong. I mean, I assume it's a voluntary thing, or is it sort of mandatory?
No, it's voluntary, but what we decided to do was incorporate it within our curriculum within Seera. So we've recently launched a learning and development curriculum. And the tool that we use to monitor that is Success Factors, it's similar, you know, HR tool. So what we actually did was make sure that we followed the same curriculum sign up. So data really is embedded. So people go on, they look at the courses that are available to them, and the Data Academy is there in the same way they can have courses on communicating with influence, or, you know, any other course. So we made a point of running it a lot more integrated, rather than seeing it as a standalone.
Okay, and I think that's one of the things, is that there's a lot of these initiatives, and you can create a great curriculum. But I think maybe it's about the internal selling and advertising and promoting that does actually exist. How did you go about that? Because obviously you've got your day job is making sure that data you make, helping the business make great decisions, but then there's this other side of it. And you kind of talked about working with HR there. Maybe give a little bit more detail around, you know, how people became aware of this, how you sold it, you know, how you got people excited about it. Did have a good intake.
Yeah, I think, you know, we definitely have a place at a place at the table, as it were, when it comes to C-level communication, which helps. We have a Seera town hall, especially during, you know, COVID times, where we have, you know, nearly 2,000 people join a call, and data always has a section there. So we have, you know, a very good platform where we're able to showcase the work that's been done previously. And then we also have internal comms tools that we use. So as I was saying, you know, the case studies really help, because people want to know more about it, for sure. I think making the analysts seem a bit more as a human makes it sound like they're robots, but you know, for people to truly understand the work. And once people start seeing the benefits that other teams are having, they kind of want a piece of it as well. And I think especially, I mean, maybe we're able to almost jump on the momentum of COVID, as it were, because there is definitely a lot more appetite for learning, I feel, at the moment. You know, you see it on LinkedIn every time, you know, I go on LinkedIn, I see people doing various courses, because not only is perhaps your downtime a little more, people see the importance in continuously upskilling. So to be able to offer something in the data realm, which is something that people do tend to be a lot more interested in globally anyway, I think is great for us.
Yeah, I think there has kind of been that silver lining in a way, in that the importance and I guess visibility of data analytics seems to have really come to the fore.
Well, yeah, and bad data.
Bad data. I was just actually saying to someone, I was having a prep call for a podcast just before we kicked off, and we were talking about data quality, cloud, all that sort of thing. And it was all about, you can put it all in the cloud, but you're just kind of making bad decisions at scale really quickly. And data quality for me in this sort of COVID era, if you will, has become so important. Normally you can't afford to make bad decisions, but now you really can't afford to make bad decisions.
I mean, I'm sorry to, you know, bring up my fellow countrymen, but the fact, you know, the UK and they've missed all of these, you know, COVID track and trace results because someone used a, you know, CSV file to upload information. I don't know if you've seen it, but I mean, it's just crazy. And you think that, you know, I can't even begin to think how much money was probably spent on I think for me, it's just another great example of where you have, you know, the gap between the work that's actually being done and the work that's being reported, and then almost your C-level, because I'm sure that everyone was being told, you've spent this much money, we've developed this super sophisticated platform, you know, when obviously it's just an upload from a CSV. So it's, and I'm sure, I mean, I'm oversimplifying it. I'm sure that they're getting multiple files coming in constantly, you know, from many places. But, you know, I think we all, if one of my team did something like that, I think I'd be pretty disappointed. But I do think it does highlight, as I'm saying, that you can almost get away with a lot within data, I think, because there isn't that, the decision makers don't necessarily have the in-depth knowledge, so rely on people to be able to give them, you know, the kind of the summary of what's happening, when actually people, I don't know, maybe it's, I feel there's two different approaches. So I always try, I oversimplify things, and I think maybe that's probably my issue for me is, you know, I try to make things as simple as possible, to make things almost as normal as possible, and get rid of all the technical jargon to help people understand. Whereas I think there's other, you know, data approaches which almost overcomplicate things and use lots of jargon and, you know, use these words that they know no one understands, because it makes it look like things are a lot more complicated than it is.
Yeah, very self-important.
Almost justify the existence. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on then to some of the new data products that and I'm kind of interested to hear if some of those have come out from, you know, the third module, where people are actually you know, solving business problems or sort of coming up with new things. But maybe talk us, and you mentioned it sort of earlier on as well, with the upsell and the upsells, etc. But what are some of the new data products that have you're kind of putting into production at the moment, and have they been sort of COVID driven, or were these always in?
So we have a cross-sell product that we're working on at the moment, which uses it's using deep learning to understand what's the best cross-sell product to offer customers who have already bought, you know, a flight or a hotel or rented a car. And this is something for us, it wasn't necessarily COVID driven, but actually, in a strange way, having the lower volumes of transaction during COVID has allowed us the space to try new things. So we wouldn't necessarily have tried to roll out a new product or a POC when our call center was already, you know, at maximum capacity. But now it's almost given us a little bit of wiggle room to be able to say, actually, you know, take out 5-6 agents, let them use the tool, you know, let's see how it works. Let's, you know, look at it in comparison to the people who aren't using the tool, and see if the conversion is higher or not. Because I think that, you know, when you're actually having that face-to-face, or face-to-face, but, you know, on the phone, you're talking to a customer, you don't necessarily always want to A/B test with a real customer. I think it's different with it's different on the online because of the sheer volume that you have. You know, you can do that testing, you can almost take out your control group, and you know, you have a lot more freedom. But when you're actually, you know, you've already invested quite a lot of time into a customer, it's something that people are a bit wary to do. But now, you know, we do have a little bit more space, and we have, you know, a bit more of an opportunity to try new things. So cross-sell for sure. You know, we're incorporating, so not just customers' previous purchases to see what's the most appropriate, say, hotel to suggest to them. We're also looking at the hotel reviews. So we're incorporating with APIs for reviews, which is an interesting, I think, new approach. And it's basically just showing, it's for us to test, you know, can we use data to make the best recommendation for a customer or not? We might not, you know, because I've booked a certain hotel to go away with my parents doesn't necessarily mean that's the same type of hotel I would like to, you know, book to go away with my friends or my husband. So I think that, you know, this is a good way for us to test, for sure. It's very interesting. And it's also really, you know, in order to get something like this up and running, we have to collaborate across a number of different departments. So it's been a really good opportunity to be able to do that as well.
Yeah. So that's quite interesting, using the reviews, because so much rich information in there. And obviously there's you know, the emotion behind it, what sentiment. So it's not necessarily just matching people with best hotel or airline based on price and location, but people actually think this is good. So it's kind of like peer reviewed recommendation.
Yeah, by segment as well. So, you know, we're able to segment it to say, is it a review by family or, you know, single, larger groups? So we're able to, you know, break down. And I think the thing with reviews, obviously, I think we can all get stuck into a review so I say spiral of death. I do it myself. I start looking at hotels and then read, you know, 10 amazing reviews and read one not so good review, and then automatically, you know, I'm stuck on that one. I'm like, that's it, I can't go there. And then you end up, you know, so I think by almost, you know, we're doing a lot of work around that as well to almost, I suppose, like weight the reviews. So not just to take them as face value. And use verified reviews as well, because, you know, some review platforms are verified, you know, you have to have stayed there, whereas others not so much. So yeah, I'll be very interested. So we're just about to launch the POC. It's going out to the agents in the next week or so. So I'd definitely be keen to update you on the results of that. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put some more time in the diary. Before I let you go, maybe if we can think back maybe to the academy, because I know this is a big area that people are working on. Maybe your top 3 sort of tips or bits of advice to any, you know, head of data or company that's looking to launch a more formalized data literacy curriculum. What are some of the 3 things that you'd kind of say, watch out for this or try that?
I say don't load it with technical terms, because people will switch off straight away. Find a way to simplify your data flows, because people need to understand the data flows and understand the caveats when it comes to using data, but they really don't need to know whether it's Hive. You know, they don't need to know, you know, any Oozy flows. They just don't. So I think it's almost resist the temptation to try and show off what you've done and actually just roll it back a lot. And I think the other things would be relevant content, for sure. You know, make sure that it doesn't necessarily have to be content that's only relevant to your industry. You can use other examples from other industries, but make sure it's something that really is transferable, you know, rather than just talking in theory the whole time. I think case studies and use cases are super important when it comes to getting people to, you know, be almost emotionally connected, which is why I think when it comes to things like, for us, the thing that's worked the best is when we're giving people the assignments afterwards, you know, make it something real. So rather than it being very hypothetical, you know, we're very much asking people, looking at things that we've had to deal with in the past, like saying, actually, our marketing spend has gone up, but our conversion's gone down. Can you, you know, how's the best way to put it? So how can you, where would you go to understand what happened here? And this is where we're looking at things like, you know, spend per digital data source. You know, are one channel converting better than others? Are we losing traffic? You know, is it falling out of a funnel somewhere along the line? So it's almost like the guided analytics. So rather than giving people just one question and saying, go find out the answers, we're almost helping them step by step, learning how we would do it in the past.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I like that idea of sort of, I guess, testing them on, or putting them on the exams around things that they actually do to improve that, rather
Yeah.
than a totally hypothetical thing around, operations in a mine environment, as an example.
Yeah.
So, no,
Yeah.
that's kind of nice, but I'm never ready. Well, how's that going to?
I mean, it takes time. It definitely does take time. And I always know before any of the courses in the team are kind of scrambling around trying to put the quizzes together. But I think because they're the ones that are actually putting them together, and it really means something to the organization, that's why it works so well.
Yeah, perfect. All right, Louise, thanks so much for joining me. Before I let you go, as is customary on the show, Data Conversations over Coffee, maybe you can give us a little bit of insights into your relationship with tea, coffee. Obviously, in the Middle East, it's a very big part of the culture. Have you kind of fallen into more of a coffee culture? Were you tea before, or where does it?
Oh, I mean, for me, British tea, like tea and biscuits all the way of an evening, but definitely I can't operate in the morning without at least 3 coffees. So for me, it's coffee for sure, coffee up to around 12, and then tea to wind down.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, good afternoon tea. Good stuff.
Yes.
Cool. All right, Louise, thank you so much for joining me. It's been great catching up with you. It's been a while.
You too.
Thank you so much for the insight, the advice, and obviously also your passion and sort of your fervor for the data profession. And we'll catch up soon.
Yeah.
We'll definitely set something up to see how the some of those new products are performing. But once again, thanks.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And we'll chat to you soon.
Nice chatting to you. Speak to you soon.